what if I were to tell you that not that long ago, an egg was just an egg, not a branding exercise, not a label game, not a cheap industrial product built on subsidized grain and clever packaging, just a nutrient-dense food from a bird eating what a bird is meant to eat. Now, technically speaking, eggs are still one of the best foods you can buy. That part is true, but here's the thing. The egg itself is not the full story. The bird makes the egg, and the bird is now part of an industrial system that was never built for your health. It was built for output. Cheap feed in, cheap eggs out. So when you crack a modern supermarket egg, you may be buying far more linoleic acid than you realize. The same unstable omega-6 fat tied to seed oils. The same fat that shows up when hens are pushed onto corn and soy. And once you see how this happened, the whole egg aisle starts to look very different. To understand the full picture, let's go back to the very start. Chickens are not cows. They are not built to stand in one place and turn piles of grain into perfect food for us. Left to their own, they peck, they scratch, they hunt for bugs, worms, seeds, shoots, scraps. They eat a mixed diet, constantly. They are little opportunists. That right there tells you everything you need to know. Now, imagine taking that animal and dropping it into a system built around one goal: scale. Once eggs become a mass market staple, the question was no longer how do we raise healthy birds. The question became how do we produce the most eggs at the lowest cost, with the least labor, on feed ingredients that are cheap, easy to store, and backed by government money. And that is where corn and soy come in. In the modern food system, corn and soy are everywhere because they are heavily supported, heavily produced, and very easy to plug into industrial feed. So instead of birds eating a wide natural mix, they get a controlled formula made to keep production high and costs low. It works for the factory, it works for the spreadsheet, but it creates a biological mismatch. Think of your body as a car. If I pour the wrong fuel in, the engine may still run for a bit, but it won't run the same. Parts wear out, heat builds, problems stack up. The same idea applies here. When you feed a monogastric animal, like a chicken, a diet loaded with corn and soy, you change the fat profile of the animal and the food it makes. And boom, that change ends up in the yolk. This is the part most people miss. A chicken's egg is not separated from its feed. It is built from it. So if the hen eats a diet high in linoleic acid, the yolk reflects that. The egg becomes a small package carrying more omega-6 fat than that bird would likely produce on a more natural diet. But here's where things get complicated. The same system that made eggs cheap also made them look normal. The carton still shows a happy farm. The shell still cracks the same way. The yolk still looks like breakfast. So people assume the inside must be more or less the same as it always was. It isn't. The reality is the industrial egg did not just change how birds live. It changed what the egg is. And once profit, subsidies, and feed formulas took over, what used to be a simple whole food became another modern product shaped by the logic of big food. In the next part, I want to show you exactly how that feed ends up altering the biology of the egg itself. So, what actually happened? The first crack in the story is this. The industrial egg system did not become dominant because it made better eggs. It became dominant because it made feed cheap. And feed is the whole game. For most egg producers, feed is one of the biggest costs by far. If you can cut feed costs, you can flood the market with cheap eggs and still make money. Now, you might be wondering, why are corn and soy so cheap in the first place? Because this was not just a farm choice, it was a policy choice. Over time, the American food system poured support into commodity crops, like corn and soy, direct support, crop insurance, research money, infrastructure, transport, processing, the whole thing. So farmers had every reason to grow them, processors had every reason to refine them, and animal feed companies had every reason to use them everywhere they could. And that right there tells you everything you need to know. When the state helps make two crops absurdly cheap, those crops do not stay in one lane. They end up in breakfast cereal, salad dressing, chicken feed, pig feed, farmed fish, seed oils, sweeteners. The same basic inputs move through the whole machine. So the egg aisle is not separate from the rest of big food. It is one branch of the same tree. But here's the part most people never hear. A subsidy does not just lower price. It shapes biology downstream. It changes what animals eat, which changes what their tissues are made of, which changes what you eat. So when you see an egg sold as healthy, natural, and simple, you have to ask a much better question. Healthy based on what the bird was designed to eat, or healthy based on what the industrial system could produce at scale? Those are not the same thing. Let me explain how this works because it's very fascinating. Chickens are monogastric animals. That just means they have one stomach, like us, not a fermentation tank like a cow. So the fats they eat have a more direct path into their tissues and into the eggs they lay. Think of it like paint going into a bucket. If you keep pouring in yellow, you do not get blue at the end. You get more yellow. Same idea here. Put in more linoleic acid through soy and corn-heavy feed, and you tend to get more of that fat showing up in the yolk. So the scandal is not just dirty barns or fake labels, though those matter. The deeper scandal is that the whole system quietly changed the egg from the inside out, then kept selling it to you as if nothing had changed. And once you see that, the next question becomes obvious. What does more linoleic acid in an egg actually mean for you? Because this is where a cheap feed formula stops being an agriculture story and starts becoming a human health story. So let's have a look at the part they really do not want you thinking about. Most people hear seed oils and think of fries, chips, mayo, salad dressing, liquid stuff in bottles, factory food. And yes, that is where most people get hit the hardest. But here's where it gets interesting. The same fatty acid problem can show up in foods people still think of as clean. Eggs are one of the best examples. Now, technically speaking, linoleic acid is an essential fat. You do need some. That part is true, but the dose matters. The context matters. And the modern person is not dealing with a tiny ancestral trickle of omega-6. We are swimming in it. It is in restaurant food, packaged food, sauces, snacks, processed meat, and then on top of all that, it can show up in animal foods that were changed by feed. That is the scandal, because the marketing says egg, simple, natural, whole food, but the production system says something else. It says the bird was built into a cheap conversion machine for subsidized inputs. Corn in, soy in, industrial fats in. Then a product comes out that still carries the health halo of an old-fashioned farm egg. Those are not the same food. Not really. Think of your gut lining like a coffee filter. It is meant to let the good stuff through and keep the bad stuff out. Now, I'm not saying an egg is poison. I'm not saying one omelet ruins your life. But when your whole diet is already loaded with unstable omega-6 fats, adding more from foods you thought were protective is a very different story. Heat, oxidation, immune stress, more inflammatory signaling, little hints, again and again. That is how modern damage works. Not always with one big event, more often with constant low-grade irritation. And eggs matter here because people eat them often, daily even. They are one of those repeat foods. So if the yolk has a shifted fat profile, this is not some tiny theory point. It becomes a weekly exposure, month after month, year after year. But here is where most people mess up. They think the scandal is just one bad brand, one dirty farm, one recall, one false label. No, the reality is much bigger than that. The real scandal is systemic. It is legal. It is normal. It is baked right into the business model. A producer who uses a more natural feed program has higher costs. A producer who gives birds real outdoor access has higher costs. A producer who raises hens in a way that reduces dependence on soy and corn has higher costs. So the market punishes the better egg and rewards the cheaper one that looks healthy enough on the carton. That right there tells you everything you need to know. Now, you might be wondering, does this really change the egg that much? Yes, because monogastric animals reflect their feed much more directly. Just like pigs, just like us in many ways. Change the incoming fat and you change the stored fat. Change the stored fat and you change the end product. This is why the seed oil issue is not just about what is cooked in canola or soybean oil. It is also about what industrial-fed animals pass up the chain. So when people say I don't eat seed oils, but then eat cheap chicken, cheap pork, and conventional eggs every day, they may still be getting a steady stream of the same problem through the back door. And big food loves that kind of confusion, because once a product keeps its health image, most people stop asking questions. They see brown shells, words like cage-free, maybe organic, maybe farm-fresh, and the thinking stops there. But here's the thing, a better label does not automatically mean a species-appropriate bird, and if the feed is still built on the same cheap industrial base, the biology downstream still changes. So this is not just an egg story, this is a modern food story. A story of subsidies, shortcuts, and biological drift. And once you see that, the carton stops being the point. The feed is the point. So if the feed is the point, the question becomes, how do they keep you focused on everything else? Simple. They sold the shell, not the system. They train people to shop by label words that sound clean, but often tell you very little about what actually went into the bird. Cage-free, farm-fresh, vegetarian-fed, organic, brown eggs, free-run. All of it sounds nice. Some of it means something. But a lot of it does not answer the one question that matters most. What was the hen eating every day? And how much of that diet still came from cheap industrial corn and soy? That is the blind spot. Because once the public learns to scan the front of the carton instead of the feed tag, the whole game is won. You stop looking at inputs and start looking at branding. You pay for the feeling of quality without checking the biology underneath. And big food is very good at selling feelings. Now, technically speaking, organic eggs can avoid some pesticide exposure in feed, and that matters. But organic does not automatically mean low linoleic acid. It does not automatically mean a species-appropriate diet. It often still means organic corn and organic soy. Same basic problem. Cleaner version maybe, but still the same metabolic direction. And then there's the color trick. People crack an egg, see a darker yolk, and think, right, this one must be better. Sometimes it is. Sometimes not. Yolk color can be pushed around by feed additives, pigments, marigold, alfalfa, all sorts of things. So a deep orange yolk is not worthless as a clue, but it is not proof. The reality is, the system learned very quickly which visual signs consumers trust, then found ways to mimic them. That right there tells you everything you need to know. And the reason this works so well is because most people still think of an egg as a raw ingredient, not a manufactured outcome. But it is an outcome. It is the endpoint of housing, stress, feed formulation, mineral balance, handling, transport, and shelf time. The bird is the factory. The egg is the finished product. But here is where things get even more complicated. Even when people do start asking questions, the information is often hard to get. Many cartons do not tell you the full feed mix. Company websites stay vague. You get sweeping farm language, lots of green fields, lots of words like humane and natural, but very little hard detail. No clear breakdown of soy use. No real sense of how much forage the birds get. No honest answer on whether pasture is a side note or the actual base of the system. And why would they rush to spell that out? If consumers fully understood that many so-called healthy eggs still come from birds built on the same subsidized feed economy as processed food, the premium image would take a hit. So they keep the messages fuzzy, not always by lying flat out, more often by telling you just enough truth to let your brain fill in the rest. That is how modern food marketing works. It gives you a sketch, and you paint the farm in your head. So when people say this is conspiracy talk, I do not buy that. You do not need secret meetings in dark rooms. You just need aligned incentives. Cheaper feed, better margins, soft language, weak transparency, and a public that has been taught to trust packaging more than production. That is more than enough. So where does that leave you? First, not with fear, with clarity. The reality is, eggs can still be a very useful food. High in protein, rich in nutrients, easy to cook. I'm not telling you to panic and throw every carton in the bin. I'm telling you to stop assuming all eggs are the same, because they're not. What you want is simple, smaller farms when possible, real transparency, actual pasture access, soy-free or corn-free feed if you can find it. Not because labels are magic, but because inputs matter. The feed becomes the yolk. That is the rule. And if you cannot get the perfect egg, do not spiral. Just make better choices where you can. Ask questions. Buy local if you trust the farmer. Look for signs of real mineral nutrition, like stronger shells. And maybe most of all, stop giving a free pass to vague premium branding. Because once you know how this system works, the safest move is not blind trust. It is informed doubt. So now you can see the real scandal. It was never just about dirty farms or false labels. It was about a whole industrial system quietly changing the egg from the inside out, then selling it back to you as if it were the same food your grandparents knew. Your homework is simple. Next time you buy eggs, do not just read the carton. Ask what fed the bird. That one question changes everything. If you want to see how this exact same pattern played out with chicken itself, and why even healthy meat can carry the same seed oil problem, then I think you'll find this video here interesting.